All right, so for my second media assignment, I decided to look at poverty and education. Deepest apologies for my voice. I am extremely sick right now. So, just for a little agenda, I'm going to start with an introduction to my topic and speaker, my video selection reasoning, an analysis of the main ideas that are addressed, and connect those to the course, as well as learned concepts and relevancy. So my TED Talk topic was how America's public schools keep kids in poverty. So just some questions I went into the TED Talk with were, is it true that wealthy children obtain better education? Is America's poverty in schools linked with race? And are America's public schools actively working on fixing the achievement gap? So my speaker was Candace Sumner. She teaches humanities for the Boston Public Schools. She is also a student in urban educational policy. She created a professional development curriculum entitled RACE, so Race, Achievement, Culture, and Equity, to engage professionals of all ages on how to conduct courageous critical conversations concerning race for the betterment of today's youth. So, overall, she encourages and initiates difficult conversations about race and education. So, as for my video selection reasoning, a lot of it was to do with my future career choice. So, I am looking to become a teacher, and I know that I'm going to be faced with situations like poverty and unwealthy students. And I do believe that it is important for me to understand the background of that and how to assist these students and understand the disadvantages that they are faced with for the betterment of my occupational position and skills. Also, just personal experience. I came from a school that was pretty wealthy, and down the street there was a school that was not so wealthy, and we were actually partnered with them through an adopt a school program. And I just wanted to understand the troubles that they were faced with. So, as for main concepts, unwealthy schools are often behind in curriculum, so they don't have access to things like music classes, libraries, air conditioning, biology labs, athletic facilities, safe fields to play in, etc. So ultimately, high quality education is exclusive to the rich. She also talks about the achievement gap. She says it's not an achievement gap, rather, an education debt for all the foregone schooling resources that were never invested in the education of the Black and Brown children over time. She also tells us to stop being perplexed by the achievement gap because it's a problem that we have created and we're not working on fixing it. She says that every court case, educational policy, and reform has been an attempt to retrofit the design rather than stopping and acknowledging that we had it all wrong from the beginning. She argues that schools are more segregated now than ever, and that if you neglect these children long enough, we don't have the right to be surprised when things don't turn out well. Another important note is that the quality of education is directly proportionate to your access to college, jobs, and future. She says that until we live in a world where every kid can get high quality education no matter their race or where they live, school funding should not be decided by property taxes or economic situations where wealthy kids benefit from state aid and poor kids have food and resources taken from their mouths. She says if we're going to call it public education, then it should be public education. Otherwise, call it what it really is, poverty insurance. She also suggests some action steps, which I'm going to get into at the end, but just the main one is adopt a school. So connecting to CHYS 1 of 90. So there's just a lot of parallels in the CHYS 1 of 90 course and the TED Talk. So for example, from the Erickson article, the privatization of childhood is a term to describe what happens when the state does not provide equal access to all children and families are individually responsible for the child's education and resources. So in this situation, a family's individual wealth or poverty largely determines what childhood a child has. So, public schools or unwealthier schools are tasked with providing education, childcare, job training, meals, and social services to low income children and also struggle with cutbacks. Meanwhile, private schools or more wealthy schools promise to nurture the minds and personalities of their students to the tune of $40,000 a year. And then the concerted cultivation versus accomplishment of natural growth comes from Annette Laurow's study of class and childhood. She creates a typology of parenting that suggests income helps to determine how a child will be raised. So overall, she realizes that social class provides certain advantages and disadvantages in terms of employment and education, which is exactly what we are seeing, hearing, learning from Candace's TED Talk. So lessons learned and relevancy, just really quick. So ultimately, wealth determines academic advantages and disadvantages, and education determines your future. So if you're not getting a high quality education because you aren't wealthy, you're going to be predisposed to disadvantages and predisposed to arguably a less successful future. The segregation of schools is contributing to the achievement gap. And if just a really major quote that I thought was really important, again, if you neglect a child long enough, you no longer have the right to be surprised when things don't turn out well. So I do believe that we need to stop the segregation. I do believe that we need to intermix the wealthy and the unwealthy and share this knowledge. So right down, I'm going to skip right down to the bottom. When resources are shared, they aren't divided, they are multiplied. So the wealthy resources need to be shared with the unwealthy students in order to create success on a more universal level. So adopting a school is a good way to do this and also to donate. There's my bibliography, and that is all.